Hi guys, today is the last Inktober video of the season, and today I'm going to be talking a bit about some of the tips and tricks that I use when I'm using references and how I make them work for me rather than the other way around. But I do have a really quick and very exciting announcement, and that's that the Kickstarter for my Memento Mori Artbook, which this piece that I'm working on today is going to be a part of, that has actually reached the stretch goal that allows all of the book covers to have a shiny metallic title and details on all of the covers. So that is such an exciting and amazing benchmark. So anyone who does pledge at any point, their book will have that really amazing detail. And we are actually winding down to the last few days of the campaign. So that's until Tuesday, the end of Tuesday, that you'll be able to pledge and get some of that extra merch or get the book. I'm really happy with this product. I'm so excited with how it's been turning out. But anyways, there is that link down in the description that'll take you over to the Kickstarter page so you can check that out and see what is available. And let's just jump into working on this piece. So let's talk about references. It sounds like a really dull topic, but I absolutely love references. I love what it's done for my artwork the past couple of years since I've really immersed myself in using them. And over the years, I've found that the way that I approach references, getting them, thinking about them, compiling them, how I plan out my pieces before I look for them, it has really changed a lot over the years, and that's helped me to get to a point where I feel like I can use my references, the best way possible so that I can make my ideas come to life without ending up a slave to the references that I do have. And it's a lot more enjoyable now than it has been in the past, and it's really exciting, actually. I love this part of the process because it allows me to know that I have everything that I need to make the piece look the way that I want, and it helps me to make sure that anatomy is where I want it to be and I'm not going to have these big stumbling blocks. And it just it makes the process of creating the piece so much more exciting and free. But that leads me to my first tip, which is something that I wish I had done years ago. It's kind of a game changer, and that's to use different references together to create one pose, one figure. So I used to try so hard to find the reference that had the specific pose, whatever I was looking for, and it took hours. Sometimes it would never happen, and it was incredibly frustrating. And the real answer is, well, first and foremost, if I can take reference myself, take that. That's an aside. But if I can't, the real answer is to take pieces and parts of references and combine them together to create one reference of that figure. And this has several benefits. One of the big ones is that it removes your artwork even further from that original reference. So when you're using reference, you really want to make sure that you are putting as much of yourself into it so that it no longer looks like something that came from the reference. You want it to look like its own thing, its own independent creation. And if you're picking apart the reference and creating a new reference from several different ones, then it means that already right from the beginning, you're on the right footing. And what I mean specifically about combining references is I'll oftentimes find a reference that has like the main core of the pose that I'm looking for, but the arm might be wrong and the legs might be not exactly what I had in my head or on my sketch. That is not really a problem. You can actually just take that main reference, and I use Photoshop where I'll just chop up the references and bring in the different reference for, say, her legs or her arm. Or if I just need to reposition an arm, which is something that's pretty easy to do if I just want it rotated, I can do that. And I'll pretty much always change the face so that it's a different face and sometimes several different facial features. And then I will, of course, look at it through my own lens of how I like to stylize things. So by the time I'm done working through the references and then working through the sketch process, it looks entirely different from the starting point. The next big thing that I learned with references, and I think this is probably more of a confidence thing, but I learned that I can vary a lot more from the references than I originally felt like I could. And a lot of times I'll do that in just the sketch, but I'll also do that in the way that I manipulate the reference itself. But sometimes I'll really play with the anatomy of what the reference is so that I can create, say, a more interesting silhouette. If the figure, if I want her arm to be pulled out a little bit more and I want it elongated so that there's more of an empty negative space between her body and her arm, I'll do that. And I won't feel like I have to restrict myself to the specific proportions that that specific model had. And once I realized that I can do that, that I can push things a little bit more in a fantastical direction, it made this whole process so much more enjoyable. I felt so much less stress that I had to really adhere to what I was seeing, when really there are a lot of options that will make the piece much more dynamic. And once I figured that out, it meant that I had a lot more tools at my disposal to make sure that the piece was flowing the way that I wanted it to, and it was becoming what I imagined. And I found that there were so many times before I was doing this that I had something in my head and then I would find reference and it would just never have that same flow and excitement and energy. And it was so frustrating because that reference was basically the pose. It seemed right. And once I've let myself push that a little bit more, push the way that the pose is, it still looks anatomically correct, but it's a lot more alive and it's a lot closer to that original concept that I had. And that's a big part of why I always now make sure that I start with a sketch or a thumbnail. There was a time where I would have a vague idea in my head of what I wanted it to be, and then I would go looking for reference first, and I would go down this rabbit hole of trying to find this exact reference for something that was in my head, therefore not at all concrete in any way, and then I would never ever find what I was looking for because it was just completely not real. I couldn't pinpoint what exactly that pose was or what I was looking for, so nothing ever really felt like it fit the bill. And I would just feel like I needed to find the perfect reference, and then once I found the reference, then all of my problems would be solved. I would just have the reference and then I could move on to making that piece a reality. But once I started forcing myself to actually sketch it out and do the thumbnail first, that completely changed the process. I think this is just another continuation of building confidence in my ability to thumbnail. Now I'm going to say this, I'm not very good at thumbnailing. My thumbnails are really rough. The figures are really rough. And I used to be just so scared of putting down a really terribly anatomically incorrect figure when I was doing my thumbnails. But once I stopped holding myself so strictly to needing my thumbnails to look good and correct, it allowed me to actually get the true feeling of what I wanted to draw down and the basic pose down. And then it allowed me to move forward into finding references that actually did fit what I wanted, but was correct and showed what needed to happen. So I don't know if this is a problem that any of you have where you're afraid to put down things because you don't know what it's supposed to be like. There's so many times where I've thought, well, I want a character, say, like floating through the air and their arms are like this, and I'll sketch it out. And I don't really know if it's going to look like that. And that's okay. It's all right if it ends up being that physically that's not quite as possible as you thought. Like in this specific piece that I'm working on today, in the original sketch, I had his arms bound a little bit tighter behind his back, but as I was trying out the pose and looking at references and taking my own reference, it came to my attention that it didn't quite show the arms the way that I thought it would. It didn't have them both featured the way that I wanted it to. And that ended up being kind of a push and a pull where I changed the reference a little bit so that it became closer to reality, but then I also push the reference a little bit so that you could see a bit more of the arms in a way that I wanted it to. And don't forget, the Kickstarter for Memento Mori, the art book for my Inktobers this year, is ending on November 2nd, so that's only a couple of days left to back it. I'm so blown away by the support that everyone has shown for it, everyone who's backed it. And I'm so excited about the artwork that I've created to go in the art book and all of the merchandise. I'm just feeling really good about this whole project. So if you would like to help us reach that next stretch goal, that would be amazing. I would love for us to reach that, but there is that link down in the description that'll take you to the Kickstarter page. You can check that out and see if you'd like to back it. And I think that's about it. So I'll be back next week with some more art content, and there will actually be color next time. I'm very excited for that.